The comprehension hypothesis says the way we acquire language, the way we develop literacy is through comprehension. When we understand what people tell us, when we understand what we read, we are acquiring the language if we understand it. The comprehension hypothesis says that the so-called skills, vocabulary, grammar, all those things are the result of language acquisition, making a big important point.
How to bring people to the highest levels of literacy. I know all about it because I'm an expert. And the answer, we all know, is one word: reading. And there's one kind of reading that works better than any other, and it was the kind of reading you did last night before you fell asleep. How many of you read last night before you fell asleep? How many of you, like me, read last night even though you shouldn't have? It was too late. This is addiction. The kind of reading that really counts is the reading you and I do all the time, that we do obsessively. We call it free voluntary reading. FVR. Reading because you want to. No book reports, no questions at the end of the chapter. You don't like the book, you put it down, you pick up another one. Free voluntary reading is the source, in my opinion, of our reading ability. It's the source of most of our vocabulary. All of our educated vocabulary just about comes from reading, in most cases. Our ability to handle complex grammatical constructions. Most of our ability to spell well, not perfectly, but to spell well. All of this, our ability to write with a good writing style, much of our knowledge of the world comes from reading. Now, I don't want to oversell this. I don't want to say if kids read a lot, they'll all go on to the university and get master's degrees. That may or may not happen. But if they start to read, they're going to have a chance. If they don't start to read, they're not going to have a chance.
In pushing something we can do right now, free voluntary surfing, which I think is a wonderful way. It's narrow reading. It's your own interest following topics you like. We do it as advanced English users, but I don't know if our students do. I think there's something going on. Let's say we discovered that 300 years ago, there were a group of teenagers in a village in southern France, I'm making all this up, who wrote to each other, wrote notes all day long, just because they liked it. Historians would say, oh, this is a very literate group, obviously. Our kids are doing this. So something very good might be coming from Facebook, and I don't think it's been properly studied. It's much too early, I think, to condemn these kinds of things. They might be very, very important, and they might be pushing us forward very quickly. Now, does internet reading good or bad? I think it's good. Here's why. Here's a couple of studies for you, way down in the bottom of the page. The more kids are on the net, the more they read. Not less, but more. The more they read print. Study on the bottom from Netherlands. A small correlation, 0.31 isn't very large, but it's positive. More use of the internet means more book reading, flipping over the page. Same thing in Singapore. More use of the internet meant more newspaper reading, more involvement with the world in general. Several studies say that more internet use, more reading from the internet, means more literacy development. It's that reading, the kind of reading they do really does count. One study done in the States, they gave computers to young kids, low income, so they didn't have access. And the more they used the computer, the more they were on the net, the better they did in reading. Not in math, just reading, which showed it was specific to reading. They were reading more. And the way they set up the study and the statistics they use, it's clear that the reading from the internet was caused.
Obviously, the only real solution is full employment and a living wage for everybody who works. A decent pay for an honest day's work, which sounds like revolutionary talk, but it's simply common sense. And this is what Martin Luther King said as well. Well, until that happens, I have a suggestion for a stopgap until we manage to get full employment. It doesn't solve the problem, but it eases a lot of suffering right away. Protect children against the effects of poverty. This means three things at least. Food. Let's work on breakfast and lunch programs. And the Duncan administration has made baby steps in this direction. Good, keep doing it. Number 2, school nurses. Come on. Let's make sure these kids have health care. Let's make sure that kids have glasses. Let's make sure they're healthy. You can have the best teaching in the world, and it's not going to help if the child can't see the blackboard, if he hasn't had breakfast, et cetera, if he hasn't had medical care. Number 3, books and libraries, books and libraries, books and libraries. This is simple to do.
My life is divided in 2 related issues. One is the continuing work on language acquisition and literacy development, which I regard as one field. It's time we all, I think, understood that first and second language are the same field, that English is a foreign language, English is a second language, foreign language instruction is the same field, and the same principles hold for both. And I've come to the conclusion that communication in general is our field.